Welcome to the Designing Hollywood podcast in association with the John Campea Show. I am your host, Robert Meyer Burnett. The Designing Hollywood podcast show is dedicated to all things movies, the movie industry, and its talented professionals. From directors, producers, writers, cinematographers, and of course, costume designers. Designing Hollywood covers some of the most celebrated professionals in the motion picture industry. The show explores the artistry, the craftsmanship, and the stories that bring our favorite motion pictures to life. Today's episode is sponsored by the Western Costume Company. Today's episode is dedicated to the highly anticipated sci-fi film Project Hail Mary, based on the best-selling novel by Andy Weir and starring Ryan Gosling, who also served as a producer on the film. The film follows Ryland Grace, a lone astronaut who awakens on a spacecraft with no memory of his mission, only to discover he may be humanity's last hope to save Earth from an extinction-level threat. What unfolds is an emotional, scientific, and deeply human journey across space. We are honored to be joined by two incredible costume designers whose work helped shape the visual storytelling of the film. Starting with David Crossman, a returning guest, who is a London-born costume designer who began his career at the renowned costume house Bermans and Nathans, where he trained for nearly a decade. He first gained major recognition working on Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, and continued collaborating with the director on War Horse and Lincoln. His extensive credits include films like Atonement, Maleficent, the Harry Potter film series, and multiple James Bond film entries. Crossman played a key role in the modern Star Wars sequel trilogy and co-designed Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and Solo, a Star Wars story, alongside Glyn Dillon. More recently, he co-designed 1917, contributed to The Batman, and earned Academy Award nominations for Napoleon and Gladiator II. He reunites with Glyn Dillon on Project Hail Mary, continuing a long-standing creative partnership. We also have Glyn Dillon himself, a British costume designer whose career spans comics, films, and television. He began as a comic book artist at just 17, contributing to titles like 2000 AD and DC Comics before transitioning into storyboard and concept design. Dillon later moved into costume design, playing a key role in the Star Wars sequel trilogy as chief costume concept artist on Star Wars The Force Awakens and Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. He has frequently collaborated with David Crossman, co-designing Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and Solo, a Star Wars story, as well as contributing to The Batman. His recent work includes character design on The Creator, and he reunites with Crossman for Project Hail Mary. Please welcome both David and Glyn to the Designing Hollywood show. Gentlemen, it is a tremendous honor to have you here, and forgive me if I geek out, because that could happen. So,
geek away.
Well, first of all, I mean, the fact that you guys have worked together on such high-profile projects, I'd love to know, how did you guys meet, and how did you start collaborating, and sort of, if you could clue us in on what's it like to work together.
I remember very well, actually, the first time I got an email from Dave, because I was on a nice canal trip down the River Seine, going to a French comic festival for my graphic novel. And I was chatting with my friend, and I got this email from Dave, which said, "Would you like to come in and see us about Star Wars?" And I kind of was like, oh my God. So, showed it to my friend, and we were both completely geeking out, and it was, it was amazing. Then I went and met him with Michael Kaplan, and luckily I got on board with A Force Awakens.
So, David, what made you send that email?
Well, because I was not for the first time. I was working with Michael Kaplan. He'd come to London to do Star Wars, and I was supervising for him. And we were seeing lots and lots of. We needed lots of concept artists, and I have to say it's a very difficult area doing concept art for costumes, because it needs a kind of different sensibility. It's not kind of regular kind of landscape or environment concept art. It's a different thing for costume. And we weren't. Not that we weren't getting anywhere, but it was a struggle, and sort of please Michael and sort of just make it happen. And then somebody showed us. I think somebody showed Michael. I think it was Ariane. I think showed Michael. And then Michael showed me, and I went, "Oh, that's good." So it was that kind of instant kind of gut reaction. We thought, "Well, got to get him," and so that was it. And it turned out, me and him just got on very well, and we worked together very well. We had a very good kind of, second guess. We sort of liked the way things looked. We had a kind of joint kind of feel about what looked good and what didn't look good, and so during the course of that film, the spin-offs came up, Rogue One, and then they asked us if we wanted to do that together, which of course we well, because it was such a great subject, and it was going back to the original Star Wars and was doing all that kind of thing, leading
the ultimate geek experience, going back and recreating the blockade runner and the everybody.
It was really very hard, but really good fun. It was a great job to do.
Well, one of the things that on Project Hail Mary is obviously Lord Miller that you work with on Solo first. They're coming back to do this film, so obviously they're assembling a team of people they already had great faith in. But I'm curious, before this movie started up, had you guys had all read the book, or were you aware of the story at all? And what was it like to have Lord Miller re-engage your services?
I hadn't read the book before they got in contact, but when they got in contact, I quickly bought the book, and it's a great book. But
it is a great book.
No, it's great. It was. I think it was the end of the actors' strike as well, or around that time. So I was very, very keen to get back on board. But the fact that it was with Phil and Chris as well was just like, well, that's great because we know them and they're a lot of fun,
David,
yeah,
was it?
Well, I hadn't read the book. I was more aware of The Martian because Janty, my friend, had done Martian with Matt Damon, so I was kind of aware when that was being made. And then, no, it really came out of the blue. It's one of those emails where you're just you're somewhere else, and then you get an email saying, are you interested in doing this or whatever? And then suddenly everything changes. You never know when that email's come. I think we were on. I'm sure it was like I was in France and it was on a Saturday morning. I was driving back from holiday. A kind of two-line email from Patty Witch just asking if we were interested or available. And then from there, we thought, yeah, great, Phil and Chris. We always had a relationship with Phil and Chris, and they're good fun to work with, aren't they? So yeah, that's how. But no, I hadn't read the book.
Well, one of the other great keys on this is production designer Charles Wood. And for those of you who might not immediately recognize his name, he worked on such films as Thor: The Dark World, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers: Age of Ultron, Doctor Strange, Infinity War and Endgame, Black Widow, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So he's very well known in geek circles. Had you guys worked with him before? And neither one of you had.
No.
So obviously,
but really nice guy.
Yeah, very. We love Charlie, and he's like we'd never really done. I've never done a Marvel film before or been kind of close to one really, but yeah.
When you guys got that call, obviously the costume design of this movie, obviously you have to design spacesuits and you have to design a cadre of geeky scientists trying to save the world and different time frames and things like that. How did you, costume design is sort of integral to production design as well, especially when you have mechanical costumes that have to interact with the actual design of, say, a ship or airlocks and things like that. So when you guys came on board and first started interacting, I guess I can't call him Charlie, Mr. Wood, because I don't know him. What is that relationship like on something like this, where you're building an environment for most of the film, which is the Hail Mary ship itself, this spacecraft, and all of the costume work that you have to do, and also, well, where do you begin, and how does that relationship with a production designer develop?
Well, I think we when we were on board, when we were started out in the studios. Charlie invited us over to the art department, and got us up to date on what his department had been up to, and it's great to see all of the stuff they were working on. The fact that the ship was, truly international. There were like Russian feeling elements and European feeling elements and American. Which is stuff that we'd all heard from Phil and Chris as well, and in terms of what we were going to be doing with the spacesuit. But also like with the suit at the end that Rocky makes for Ryland, that we had to kind of go along in tandem with what they were thinking for the Xenonite kind of stuff that Rocky was making. So it was good. We had a good working relationship with him. He's a nice guy, and we were in and out there a lot.
Our first meetings really were Phil and Chris and Amy Pascal, weren't they? And Glyn had done some kind of preliminary drawings of the suit and what colour the suit might be, and Greg Fraser was there. And so there was a lot of discussion about what colour the sort of main suit was going to be, and, what should we do. And it was kind of how detached it was going to become from the everyday, like the Orlan suit or the modern day spacesuits, so that we're looking at where spacesuits are going and what kind of direction, and then Ryan had his own kind of thoughts about, he was same as us. He wanted a quite head down suit. So once we knew all that, we then went to see Charlie just about the environments more or less, and it was like, so then Charlie gave us the kind of load of everything. Throughout the film, they kind of walk you through the film. They have all their concept art in kind of story order, and they more or less kind of give you a tour of what they're doing. And but for us, I think the first concerns for us really were colour, wasn't it? With car, suit, and all that kind of thing. What we'd have to do.
Yeah, we heard from Phil and Chris that Ryan had said he wanted to avoid the larger helmets because he'd done First Man, and also I think the connection with Andy Weir and The Martian, and that had a larger helmet, and so in order to be different, I think he just wanted to bring it tighter to the head. That was the initial notes, that it wouldn't be a big chunky EVA suit, something closer to like the escape suits, the pumpkin kind of, something closer to that kind of vibe.
We've seen over the last I guess I would call myself a spacesuit aficionado. And you go all the way back in Britain to TV shows like UFO, which had space, that was the first Jerry Anderson live action series. And there was great spacesuits in that, both alien spacesuits, which were tighter and had smaller helmets. And then you had spacesuits that were more inspired by the Apollo program or 2001, which had the great angular. But now we've seen over the last 10 years, you've had things like, you've had The Martian, like you said, you've had Interstellar, we've had things on television, whether it's The Expanse or now For All Mankind, modernizing. But we also have things like SpaceX and showing us what new modern spacesuits look like. So you've got this whole great design lineage of spacesuits. Did you consult with actual people that are building real spacesuits? Like, did you talk to anybody from SpaceX who are making, they almost look like Apple spacesuits. They're so streamlined, but that doesn't necessarily maybe look as sexy on camera. So
we definitely looked at all of that, what was coming, trying to future-proof the suit a little, but also giving it a bit of a retro feel as well.
Yeah, but I love that. I can't wait to get my unlicensed action figure from Hong Kong. I've got my Interstellar figures. I've got my Martian figure. I can't wait to get the Ryland Grace figure. Like we talked about earlier, I had to get the helmet from the popcorn helmet, because when no one's going to make anything in that scale unless you're going to buy a prop replica, which you probably costs $10,000. So when you're looking into that, how important, obviously you have form and function, so you don't just want it to look good on camera, but you want an audience to believe that this is if it's too ornate and too, but what I really loved is that the Hail Mary itself and all of the spacesuits were very believable, or the spacesuit was incredibly believable. So how do you how long did it take to develop, say, the suit? and even the suit that what Ryland's wearing at the end, that Rocky's made him. What is that process like, and how long did it take? Did it take a week? Did it take a month? Did you have to design suits and build things that didn't work?
It took longer than a week.
Yeah, it definitely took longer than a week. Just to say on the other point, we did have a conversation with NASA. Me and Glyn did sit down and talk to NASA about, trying to believe all layers in the garment, so that the protective needs of the suit, because I learned all about micrometeoroids, things like that, hitting the suit at 45,000 miles an hour and all that kind of thing, and how certain fabrics have to be tougher. And sorry, Glenn, go on.
We're asking if 5 years from now what are you likely to be doing that we might be able to do, and we were wondering whether they would have like digital displays that might show up on the visor, but she was still saying that they still have issue with battery power with that kind of thing. So, and one of the other points that she made was a good point, where what goes into space, they try not to put lots of new stuff into space because they don't know whether it's reliable enough. So a lot of the stuff, the technology that they take there is old stuff that they know works, and they know they can easily fix it. If something goes wrong, they can fix it over the radio. It's like you're saying, like the Elon Musk suits, to me, they look too simple, and they don't look like spacesuits.
No, I know.
We like having all of the bearings and the gaiters and all of the the stuff that makes it feel like a romantic spacesuit, like the old silver Mercury ones. That, to me, that's what I grew up thinking of as a spacesuit. So you want to have something with all the bells and whistles, really. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that you accomplish that really well. I mean, and it also has to look cinematic. The color, I thought the color was an interesting choice. Like, again, you talked about working with Greg Fraser, and obviously he did things like Creator, so you kind of know what his approach is, and the cinematography in this film is astonishing. And I'm always curious, like, how far down the road do you go with the director of photography? Because production design, costume design, and photography all have to sort of work in tandem to make sure that the mise en scène looks proper. Like, if you had a spacesuit that was too bright and was too garish, it's a subtle thing, but it's definitely very important.
I think Greg was more worried about. I think the biggest worry to everybody was the tunnel between Grace and Rocky's ship and how things reacted in that tunnel. So we tested that the most. I think Greg was always happy with the red spacesuit. I think the red just fitted the kind of feel of the film anyway. And but once you got inside the tunnel, there's so little light. It had such an effect. Colours being on down there. So we did test. We tested all the t-shirts, jumpsuits, spacesuit in there. We tested everything in that tunnel just to see what would work.
Wow.
Some things really didn't work. They took on completely different colours in the tunnel and went kind of sludgy or green or just weird. And so there was all these things to avoid.
Is there in terms of like, what kind of fabrics are you using for the exterior suit? I mean, it has to be able to move and it has to look good. Is there a spacesuit fabric that's go-to for Hollywood?
Well, it's different kind of nylons and stuff, isn't it? It's the man-made.
Yeah, we call them performance fabrics. So they're either kind of high-grade, kind of tough nylons. Some of them are too tough to use for the whole suit, but you can use them in kind of smaller areas of the suit. So you can have kind of reinforcements in them. And the general suit is going to be either a nylon or a good quality sort of polyester. But yes, it'll be something that's kind of woven and tough, and it's but they are and then mix that with webbing and kind of all the linings are kind of strong cotton. So yes, they're all pretty strong, what we'd call performance fabrics.
How long does it take to once you have the design? How long does it take to actually build the suit, and how many multiples of something like that do you make?
The thing is, it's kind of difficult because it's kind of Parkinson's law. You do it in the time that you have, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
The problem with Hail Mary, say you're waiting for Ryan to arrive, Ryan arrives. You can't do a kind of finished, signed off suit until Ryan's had it on, is happy with everything. So that's going to take, at least a couple of fittings. We'd seen him once in London, where we'd fit this kind of red, very basic shape on him, and so then we were sort of able to proceed, but you can only take the suit so far. And then poor Jenny, our cutter, she then prepared everything as much as we could, because in week 3, I think, of filming, we had to have at least kind of 5 suits ready, plus Grace's white cooling suit worn underneath the suit, because there's a whole sequence of him getting into the suit, which was a lot more complicated in real life than it was in the finished film. Then, so by the time you have Ryan in that suit, he's made his notes. He's going to. I think we were only left with a couple of weeks, and there was a lot of weekend work and just trying to finish the right amount in time in sort of around 3.5 weeks. But they had so much to do because they had to do the cooling suit as well, and so it was this horrible kind of bottleneck, tons of work at the beginning of the film, which kind of nearly killed everybody. It was just tough to get to that, establishing that first kind of, and then we had to worry about everything else. But in the end, he had 8 red suits. He had, I think, 7 that he wore, and then there was an 8th one, which was kind of a sort of standing one.
I mean, it's not often you have an actor who's already played an astronaut, like you brought up First Man, Damien Chazelle's First Man, where he played Neil Armstrong.
Well, that looks so good. The suits in that are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan Gosling might be one of the great. Actually, people love him. I can't say that, but he truly is one of the great movie stars. He's a man of the people, yet at the same time, he can play a replicant. He can play Rachel McAdams' love interest. He can play Neil Armstrong, and now he can act opposite a rock puppet for the majority of a film, and he seems like to be a great guy. But I'm curious, like, were there things people talk about? There's this story when Christian Bale met Ben Affleck in a costume shop buying their kids' Halloween costumes, and Christian Bale said before Ben Affleck played Batman, make sure they put a zipper in the suit. That's what you got to know. Was there anything that Ryan Gosling brought to you and said, listen, here's what I need in this suit? Did he have any insights into what he wanted as a performer coming off of First Man to give you some insight into how to make the suit better?
He knew he didn't want a big helmet, that's for sure. But we already knew about the going to the bathroom thing because we'd done the Batman.
Of course.
So we knew that we wanted, we pride ourselves on the actor being comfortable, so and being able to go to the bathroom without having, a costumer go with them.
Well, when you're also building a suit and having that mobility using performance fabrics, as you call it, I would imagine that, like, if you have to build things in where we all move, that there's special, or there's tried and true things, whether it's neoprene suits and stuff.
And Jenny, our cutter, knows all the places to put gussets and stretch and kind of places where you're going to need to move. I think what surprised us on this film was every day there was a kind of different requirement for the suits. It was you never got to the point where you had the suit on. Very well done. I think when we tested the suit, everyone clapped the suit. I thought, I've never been clapped at a camera test before. I was looking at it and thinking, God, that's amazing. And then after that, it was, the requirements were so high in the tunnel. It was such a hot set, claustrophobic tunnel. And then having to do certain things, because it's Phil and Chris and Ryan together, and they're all kind of sort of improvising and working out. There's just so many things that you would not normally do on a spacesuit film, because normally you'd be doing that kind of slow, I'm in a spacesuit kind of movement. It just didn't apply to this film at all. So we were forever adjusting, trying to make things work, trying to alter stuff. Get to the end of the day, we'd have to do this, and that went on for months. Maybe we just did a terrible job, but I think it was all these kind of unique requirements of the suit, the helmet, the light. It never ended. But in the end, it looks great, So but it was all that working in the tunnel, working with the puppet, being on top of the ship, all the kind of wire work, which we'd made all the suits for. We've all done plenty of wire work films, you know, in our careers, and it's but this in particular, I think, because the focus is all on one actor
right
all the time, and it's just one. It's that all the time. So I think that brought a lot of attention to everything that we were doing, and so.
Yeah, I mean, there was another. Were there any more challenges because there is so much zero gravity work and exterior ship work, and that was. I mean, they talk about how there wasn't blue screen or green screen, you know, on this, and that it was really, I have to say, that the stuff on the exterior of the Hail Mary was really extraordinary when they're going into the atmosphere of the planet to gather the astrophage or the tau amoeba. I mean, incredible. It was really convincing. Now, did this did it pose any more difficult problems, or just was it par for the course because you guys are such veterans at doing this?
No, I think like Dave was saying, it's like he was being asked to do, and he was coming up with moves that, you know, maybe you wouldn't normally in a spacesuit film, because, you know, even just kind of looking all the way back, so, you know, which you wouldn't, or you'd have a helmet on where you could do that in your head and the helmet stays in the same place. This, because they wanted this kind of helmet that moves and was tied to the head, you know, it had to have a gaiter that swung around it in this position, and so all of that kind of, we had different size gaiters for different action, so there'd be different helmets, you know, different gaiter sizes, so it was all, yeah, it was an interesting challenge.
A lot of it was learning. So it was never par for the course. You'd come in each day and wonder what was going to, because you'd always need something new each day. It would never pass without, right, we need to do this now. We need to, as Glyn said, even the looking up, the helmet moving with the head, all of those things. Yeah.
One of the things that I mean, I know we're belaboring the suit, but I'm just interested. But I remember reading back in I think it's Cinefex magazine in 1988 when they were designing the dive suits for Cameron's The Abyss, and his brother was building the dive suits, and they wanted a way to really see the actors' faces, so they made them very big, and it was really effective. But I've always been curious on suits like in Project Hail Mary. Do you guys have to build? Are there lights inside the suit in order to illuminate faces at all?
This was a big thing. It was like, how many space films have you seen where there's lights inside? Why would an astronaut need his face lit up? What's the point of that? You know, we don't need that. You know, so Greg was determined not to light the actors from inside the helmet.
Wow. Okay. Not like Iron Man, who's got face-up displays.
Yeah, why do you want lights in your face? Especially on the Abyss, I'd rather put the lights out and just, you know. But you want the lights going outwards, not so, which was a big thing of Greg. And he said the only kind of ambient light, we did try just to put a very soft kind of internal light, just to kind of raise the darkness a little bit. I'm not sure we ever used it. I remember, but there was a deliberate. We'd never light inside the helmet. We'd never have those lights in. You know.
I think his big philosophy for the whole film was it should all be a bit dirty. Like, you know, there's always something in front of something else, and you're seeing stuff in front of the glass, and so that whole idea that you can't quite see something. So having just the light on the side of the helmet, lighting up enough of the face to give you the emotion and the drama, but it's like, yeah, it wasn't. We didn't want to do the completely well lit, see everything.
Yeah, because you see some and there's like rows of LEDs and they're kind of like it's just like, well, what in the I know it's there for a reason.
It looks cool,
like but what is the point of it? And turns out there is no point.
Right, and you know, I think back to spacesuits of yore, like movies like Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires has a great, you know, but that's that Italian pop art design from the 60s. Or more recently, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the spacesuits from the Chinese film The Wandering Earth, which have like weird exos. I don't have the action figure I can grab, but it is over there. But again, with these like bowl, like just a big glass bowl helmet. I mean, it's cool, but not as convincing. Whereas, I mean, that was the great thing. I've often thought in my own head canon that The Martian takes place in the same universe as Project Hail Mary. Maybe Project Hail Mary takes place 20 years later. Not just because it's Andy Weir, but but yet they've just traveled to Mars. Now they have to travel to a different star system. So, it kind of works. That's why I got to get my Ryland Grace figure to put next to my Matt Damon figure. But there was, I mean, was there any kind of thought? I mean, Project Hail Mary felt like its own. I didn't feel like it felt like any other movie. It felt like the design was unto itself. It was unique to Project Hail Mary. While watching it, that I think that helps. That was the believability of space travel has always been a thing with me, and some movies do it really well, and some movies don't. This movie was incredibly convincing in terms of, and again, I would ask, did you have to talk to people in terms of like astronauts, how you get inside and outside of a spaceship in zero gravity in a vacuum of space? Was that also a consideration? Like, how do you go through an airlock, and does all of that did all of that come into play at all? Like, are there emergency things like you plug in air on one side and then pull it out when you can go outside and be like? Was there other technical considerations that you included?
There's tethers on the suit which you hook as you go along just to kind of keep you in place. But Eunice would have worked out the movement or the type of movement that Phil and Chris wanted, around the ship. So she would have been in charge of that, and then we would have experimented with different harnesses and doing some tests on wires with the suit and stuff.
When the funeral kind of happens and the bodies get ejected
from
the airlock, and what the physics is in terms of would they just keep on going? And I think, because technically, I think the speed they were going at, and they ejected them, that they would just kind of keep going all the way, so you'd see them going off, but they'd be going in a straight, rather than dropping behind. If you drop something out of a car, you'd leave it on the side of the road, but in space it would just keep on going. It always looked like it's going that way. But anyways, I mean, I enjoyed that kind of science aspect of it,
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I think the film was, incredibly convincing. Is there anything that you didn't anticipate that came up during filming that was surprising, or that you had an obstacle that you had to surmount that might have been interesting that you didn't anticipate?
I don't know. I mean, I loved Rocky's suit. That was like, but we knew that was coming, so it wasn't really a surprise.
Well, no, that was the next thing. I was gonna move into the whole Rocky. Like, Rocky has an environment suit. His sort of the geometric. Would that fall under costume or production design, or both?
Costume.
So now let's talk about the Rockster.
We just made one for reference. So we just made a reference suit, and then they
for Rocky, but I'm talking about the one that Grace wears, though. That's us as well.
Yeah.
Well, do you mean the Grace one, Robert? Sorry.
Well, no, I was talking about like the Rocky character. Once he's going to build his pressure suit his own suit, his own space suit that he's created to interact in our atmosphere, which I thought looked great on camera. And that to me could be a combination, but you said the costume, you guys had to come up with that. That, I was astonished that you have a puppet that's inside a suit. Like, how did you guys begin? When you realize you're dealing with not a CG character,
Wait, no. So by the time that we were dealing with that, we'd already designed the suit that Grace wears, that Rocky had made for him.
Right.
So we knew what design world the language that we were using for the Zenonite kind of suit. So then, yes, it did come down to us to design Rocky's one, but that was all CG. So we made, like Dave said, we made a reference one for it that just was on a non-moving figure of Rocky. So and then that went to the CG people, and they scan it all, and they make the magic of it moving.
Sure.
When you talk about things that we didn't anticipate, the suit that Rocky makes for Grace, it turned out to be so big and cumbersome. You had to basically wear a full harness and then be held by 2 wires from the ceiling in order to walk in the suit. You could walk in the suit if you're brave enough, but the problem is if you fell, you'd probably just smash your face.
Right.
It's so it was always supported by 2 wires, and then we did lots of tests with Ben, our stuntman, because the tunnel floor as well is all kind of rocky and Zenonite, so that wasn't. So he was kind of supported walking through the tunnel in anticipation of Ryan wearing it at the end.
So what was that like? Like when one of the things that I loved, and maybe you guys, I don't know how to describe this. I don't want to. If you haven't seen the movie, don't listen to this part. But one of the things that I loved is the very end of the film. You see a certain classroom, and you kind of have to represent what does a classroom look like. And did you guys have any input in designing a classroom full of people?
Nothing. No. That's what we didn't do. No,
I didn't know, because it's really only a couple shots. But
with his
Neil Scanlon and his Creatures Department, I think they did some concepts and they did some more, and then I believe it's mostly CG, the whole thing. So yeah.
The fun thing for us for that end sequence was like his costume. Like,
it's great.
What he would have left over from the ship. So I don't really think you see it in the film, but like the trousers that he's wearing, they're cut from one of the flight suits, and he's wearing a belt, and we've done a belt buckle that's like made of Zenonite that Rocky would have made for him, and all of the sewing on it is a little bit, it's nowhere near as good as Jenny would normally do. So we had to purposely ask Jenny to do bad sewing for the top of his trousers, so it looked like he would have done it. And then our brilliant breakdown department, run by Tim Shanahan, they kind of break everything down to look like it's 10, 20 years old. So his cardigan and the t-shirts all faded, and even on the laces, like the laces in his Chuck Taylors, because your laces always break after a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. So we found stuff that was on the ship, like elastics and stuff. There's a nice big close-up actually in the film, so you can see that they're not normal laces. They're like stuff that he would have got from the ship that he's made as makeshift laces.
When you guys are designing, when you have a whole alien race here, and you kind of have to think about, I think the design of their whole race, beginning with the ship, beginning with Rocky's ship, is stunning. I mean, I remember being at CinemaCon a year ago, and the only thing I wanted to see was if they were going to show anything about Project Hail Mary. And when they came to the MGM Amazon presentation, each studio does a presentation during CinemaCon, they didn't say anything. The lights just dimmed in the Celine Dion Theater, the Coliseum Theater, and they showed us 8 minutes of Hail Mary last year. They hadn't released the trailer yet. And I was really struck by the design of his ship. I mean, it kind of looked like the inside of an organ or inside of a concert piano. And I thought that was such a really bold choice to make. But when you have a race of people, like, or a race of beings, they have to have their own aesthetics. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting is from the things that Rocky makes. Was there any kind of a design language that you and the production design team came up with going into production, like figuring out, like, how do they build things and what would they look like and do they have clothes and all of that? Did you create some kind of extraterrestrial guidebook to sort of guide you on this journey, or not?
Well, I think that the art department always have, that they were developing what the habitat, like the Xenonite habitat and the ship, and it was more that department that were doing that. So we would go and visit and, try and make our design for Gracie's suit and Rocky's suit. It had to be working in tandem with them in that way.
Because Rocky was an artist. He's making little representations and things like that. So they have aesthetics, and they have. I'm always curious, how deep do you go when you try and come up with the aesthetics of an alien race?
There was a brief moment where Rocky is wearing kind of straps and belts, and does he wear anything? Because I think there was a kind of moment in the book, isn't there, mentioned, but in the end it kind of just went away, didn't it?
Yeah.
He does have some stuff.
They're more embedded, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Rock. They're kind of part of his natural form.
And of course, when he's just celebrating, he has his little party gear on. That was all done by the creature department.
When you started on this film, was it already decided to do a practical puppet for Rocky, and were you down with that, or how did you feel when you first heard of the approach to Rocky?
I suppose you'd assume that there's some puppet work, and then they'd enhance it with CG afterwards. I suppose you'd have the puppet there for the referencing and someone for Ryan play off. But in the end, the puppet was so successful, it just worked, didn't it? I suppose there is some enhancement somewhere, but I think most of the puppet is real, isn't it? It's kind of,
It really, well, you could tell. I mean, as good as CG's gotten, my jaw was on the floor.
But you like the fact that it's a puppet, and you kind of enjoy it more in a way. I'm glad it's that, I'm glad it is what it is. So it's,
I think because Phil and Chris had worked with Neil Scanlon on Solo, they knew how that all works, and so I think they were keen to do that. And because it's also great for Ryan when he's on set, not to be acting with a tennis ball, but he's actually acting with a great representation of what it is,
I don't know if it would have worked if he had to act with it. I mean, he's that kind of an actor, he could have made it work, but I think that, that it's been talked about how the puppeteer and him worked so well together, and he ended up doing the voice and all that. What a coup that was to go that route for an actor, because
that's still great with the improvisation. Anything improvised still has that nice kind of energy. It doesn't lose it, kind of talking to a CG form. So yes, it was a great idea.
Yeah, it really worked out. How long? What was the production schedule on this? Was it a long shoot?
The shoot was quite long, but the prep, we had to kind of, because I said, well, look, because I was still doing Gladiator, I think, and then I said we need to get Glyn going so Glyn can start drawing. And so I think Glyn had a period, and then we started kind of physical workrooms and all that kind of thing. Once we've got some ideas to show, and so I think 10, 18, it was about 20 weeks prep, I think. But a lot of that was Glyn on his own.
Wow.
So I was more. And then we'd do a bit of spacer work, go pop in and see Phil and Chris. They were always at Pinewood developing Rocky, at Neil Scanlon's shop. And once you've kind of got the idea, then you can start building the suit, in preparation. I think we saw Ryan briefly in London. You try and glean what you can from that kind of brief meeting. Try and work on that. And we're working with Stella, our assistant, who's the kind of linchpin of all this department, and so yes.
How do you guys feel? I mean, obviously you come from my side of the tracks in the sense that science fiction, fantasy, and horror in terms of motion pictures has become, it used to be for just a small, now it's de rigueur. Everybody loves science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And we've seen, especially over since Star Wars, which is going to celebrate its 50th anniversary next year. How do you feel about the evolution of fantasy and science fiction storytelling as we move into the future. I mean, everybody screams about AI, but you still need the human element, and you still need the design element of so many different things. Do you see that design in film, both costume design, production design, cinematography, that these things will continue to evolve with the human element, or do you see AI playing a role?
I think this film proves the point, doesn't it? It's, you know, it's a good script, it's a good actor, it's a good puppet, great. I mean, amazing visual effects, because you just don't really notice the visual effects. You just
Amazing.
You just see beautiful things, and you've got you know, Greg Fraser's eye, Paul Ladd visual effects, and it's all those mixtures of people, the humor of Phil and Chris, the writing of Andy, all those ingredients. I don't know if I'd want to see an AI. Nothing against AI personally, in case they take over the world next year. But generally, not that not that I'm not interested, but I think it's always used in a kind of quite a negative way, isn't it? It's always used just to produce something. You know, here's Brad Pitt fighting Tom Cruise. You know,
right?
There's no. I don't think it's being used in the right way just yet. Maybe I don't know, but I think
it's also a medium. You know, you're taking previously existing things and kind of putting them together, whereas
so something, it doesn't excite you to see it. You don't,
no.
You don't feel visceral human excitement, and I think that's what this film has achieved, and I think that's why everyone's going to see it. I think that's why people see it twice, 3 times. It's got that repeat viewing quality to it, which is so elusive in films, where you just want to go again and just go and see Lamar again and go and look at it. You know, I mean, it's magic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think with AI you feel that the process isn't there. It's one of the great things about any kind of art, like or
yes.
music or anything, is it's gone through a process, more often than not a painful process, before you end up with the end result. And that process lives in the finished thing in some way. So that's why a lot of time when I look at AI stuff, even though it seems accomplished in some way, it is lacking something. And whether you want to call it soul or something spiritual like that, but it's just, it lacks the process. It lacks the painful way of getting to that end result. And I think
you could say the same for when visual effects are overused or badly used. You know, you just don't care. You just look at them and just think, I just don't care.
I love that.
It's like Tom Cruise, when you know that Tom Cruise has done that stunt himself, it adds value to it. You could do exactly the same shot by shot, and if it was all CG, it would look the same, but it would lack something. The fact that we know it's him putting his life in danger to do that, it gives it some excitement and some worth, you know.
Well, I think you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, I've never quite heard it put that way, but it lacks the process. I mean, all the different decisions that are made. I mean, you could type in, come up with a spacesuit, and you'd get a spacesuit. But it's all the little things. It's all how your cutter knows how to make so it's not, the arms aren't too tight, and the design work that you've done that goes all the way back to your comic work in 2000 AD. And David, all the work you've done on however many movies, science fiction, armor, you know, whether you're making Gladiator II armor or whether you're working on a Star Wars movie, you're bringing a lifetime of aesthetic choices and design elements that only you have been able to gather because it's filtered through your personality and what interested you. So you're the only person that exists on Earth that can bring us your point of view. And the same is true of both of you. And I think that, you know, this movie really, like you pointed out, David, this is a collection of everybody's taste. And it's people, obviously, Ryan Gosling saw this book in galley form and realized it was worth doing. Lord Miller thought it was worth doing. Greg Fraser came on board. It's sort of funny to me that this movie came out the same week that the Dune 3 trailer dropped. And on social media, everybody's talking about this movie and they're singing the chant that Hans Zimmer made for Dune 3, you know, and like me walking into work in the morning and you hear the Fremen chant. And it's so interesting to see when something is done well, especially something that captures the imagination of people young and old, how it can take hold, and suddenly it becomes a part of the fabric. It's memeable. It's on social media, and I think that's what fuels people are going back to see Project Hail Mary again and again and again. They're taking their friends. My mother asked me, "What is this Hail Mary thing? Should I go see it?" You know, she's 85 years old, and I'm like, she would love it. You know, it's just a question of. Well, I guess my final question to you guys is: you've been a part of things that do become a part of the zeitgeist, that do have built-in fan bases. When you start on a project, is that awareness? Does that affect, or does that sort of stoke your enthusiasm to work on something like this, knowing that it's going to join a pantheon of films that people look back on year after year after year and revisit again and again, probably for their... I mean, this is a movie people are going to show their kids in 50 years. Do you have any inkling of that when you work on it?
I think, to be fair, when we first were asked to do it, we didn't have any idea. No, I mean, I was just excited to work with Phil and Chris. I love their Spider-Verse films, so I think when you were talking earlier, I think about it. It doesn't look like anything. In a way, it looks a bit like the Spider-Verse films. It has that color and that dynamism of animation in some ways, but it's live action. So no, we didn't know at the beginning whether this was. It's a really nice surprise that it's getting all this attention and.
You know that you have the good ingredients for Phil, Chris, Ryan Gosling, Greg, etc. So it's got as good a chance as any. But no, it could have easily have gone the other way. To be honest, it could be.
You never know.
This failure of Project Hail Mary.
Well, everyone knocked this one out of the park. I really hope they release. They released an extended version of The Martian on home video, and I think that version's even better than the theatrical version because you have more time with the NASA characters, and they said that the first test cut of this was like 3 hours and 45 minutes. It was reported in the trades last week, and I'm like, well, I want to see that, but I would love to see. Give me 25 more, but give me a 3-hour cut of this movie because I would love to see more.
I mean, I heard rumor at the wrap party that they had something like 7 hours worth of footage that they could have used. So there's enough for some good DVD extras, I think. Yeah,
I mean that would be great. Well, gentlemen, is there anything you're working on now that you can talk about? What's next for the two of you?
We not long ago we finished working with J.J. Abrams again for his project Ghostwriter.
Okay.
Called The Great Beyond.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's called The Great Beyond now. That was its code name. And we're back on the Batman 2.
Oh, I can't wait. I would ask. I mean, is there anything you could tell us about that? It's dangerous to ask questions.
I can tell you that I think we can say the script is really good. I think we're safe enough to say that.
Okay, that's an interesting question because, okay, obviously the batsuit is iconic, and I thought in The Batman there was some really interesting choices, like to make the bat's symbol out of the gun that killed Bruce Wayne's parents or whatever. Is there going to be? Will we see an evolution of the batsuit?
I don't think we can talk about that.
Okay. I have to ask.
I can't say this. No,
but the script is really good.
Batman's in it, so that's good.
Batman's in it.
Batman's in it. No, I can't wait. I loved the Batman. I was like, how do you make very different from what Christopher Nolan did? And that's a tough thing to do. The look and feel of it. Yeah, I thought it was.
When we were making it, I wondered that, and it turned out I love that Batman. I think.
Oh, it's great.
Matt Reeves is a great director, and it's yeah.
The scene when the Batmobile's first introduced in that car chase is one of the greatest. The sound design of that sequence is
walking towards the car wreck, that kind of shot, amazing, But anyway.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Greg Fraser. He's great.
Yeah, he's been on the show. I've interviewed him on this show, and what a nice guy. He's so. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for both being here and sharing your stories with us and giving us your time. David, it was great to see you again. And Glyn, great to meet you. As a fan of going back into the work, I can't wait to see what you guys are doing, because you get to work on these great big prestige projects and make stuff that we lifelong, I call us not geeks, but imagination connoisseurs, are eagerly awaiting. So I can't wait to see what's next with all of you guys. And thanks for being guests on the Designing Hollywood show.
Thank you.
Very much.
A special thank you to founder and executive producer Martika Ibarra, co-founder, costume designer, the legendary Marilyn Vance, and of course, John Campea from the John Campea Show. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in to the audio version wherever you listen to podcasts. I am, of course, your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, and you can find me on Instagram at rmburnett, or find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or on YouTube at PostGeek Singularity. Thanks very much. Like, subscribe, and give us your comments. What would you like to see on the channel? Right down below. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Designing Hollywood.